listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma, and I'm your host, Trish Close. Mark McWilliams on the podcast today, founder, owner, winemaker at Arista Winery in the Russian River Valley in California. There's a lot to say about this interview, but I want to keep this short because I want to get right to it. I love being surprised by these interviews. Not that I have assumptions, really. Okay, that's a lie. I do have assumptions about how some of these interviews are going to go, and I like being surprised at the end of them. And I certainly like making connections with my subject, and I made a connection with Mark McWilliams. Maybe it's because we're both Southern, and we like to say y'all. Not sure. Mark is from Texarkana, Texas. He talks about growing up in Texarkana, and then explains the connection to California, how we got there, and why and how he decided to go into the wine industry. He says it hit him like a ton of bricks. Arista Winery has been through a lot of changes. It was founded by his parents, and then at some point there was this decision of who's going to take it over. And Mark and his brother Ben, he talks about why they decided to take it over and the challenges that they faced and how they had to narrow their focus with this business. A lot of takeaways for me. This idea of low and slow. No, I'm not talking about cooking. Paying attention to the process versus the results. And my favorite, everything happens for a reason. Here's Mark McWilliams. Before I do anything, hook 'em horns, right?
Hook 'em horns? Wait a minute. I did a lot of research on you. You got a Longhorn connection?
My stepdad is from Fort Worth.
Okay. I'm like, I didn't see anything about Austin with you. Okay.
No,
all right.
But I mean, as you know, being from Texas, Mark McWilliams, it's really the only state that matters in the entire United States.
Absolutely.
If you're from there. If you're from there.
And then if you're not from there, nobody cares.
Right.
But I agree. You know, it's funny. I've lived in California for a long time, and a long time, and people still to this day, I think Texans do this. You know, where are you from? Well, I'm from Texas, but I live in California.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. I know it very, very well. I've visited the beautiful state of Texas many times, and I love it. Mark McWilliams, owner, founder of Arista Winery, located in Russian River Valley. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
And I could tell you were a good old Southerner as soon as we clicked on the Zoom link. I was like, oh yeah, he's my people.
There we go. I'm waiting for my first y'all from you.
Oh, it'll happen. You know, it's funny because I worked in TV news for a long time, and everyone's like, you don't really have an accent. And I was like, oh, just wait until I get on the phone with my mama. It'll come out right.
Turn my twang on.
Yeah, right. That's right, y'all.
It comes back.
Okay, so you're from Texas. Where in Texas are you from?
I'm from a small town in East Texas called Texarkana, right on the border of Texas and Arkansas.
Oh, yeah. I know some people from Texarkana. Or who?
Not a rich tradition of winemaking in Texarkana.
What?
Or beer and margaritas, but we can talk about that too.
I'm okay. I'm okay with beer and margaritas. What was it like growing up in Texarkana?
You know, it really, truly was a wonderful town to grow up in. It was small. Small is relative. I would imagine it was probably 30,000 people when I was there growing up. It was a great place to be from, to be raised in. My family had a ranch kind of outside of town that I got to spend a lot of my youth running around the woods and just kind of learning how to be a boy. And it was a special place to grow up. Coincidentally, I hadn't been back in almost 20 years, and I was there last weekend for the first time in almost 20 years, and it had changed a lot. But I loved my hometown.
That's wild. My mom just went to my hometown for a weekend. They went to see a play and had some dinner with friends, and she sent me pictures, and it's very heartwarming. Very, very heartwarming.
Is that Aiken?
That is Aiken, South Carolina, sir.
So, you know, next to Texas, I got a big piece of my heart in South Carolina.
Okay.
I have two siblings who have homes there, one that lives there full time, another that spends a lot of time there. And I have some good buddies from Aiken, South Carolina.
How funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who are they?
How long did you live there?
I lived there until I was 16.
Okay.
So, and I'm 44.
Okay. So did you know Tom Wyatt?
The
He and his
Wyatts.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tom Weldon is his father, Tom. And then there's this other golfer named Kevin Kisner. Don't know if you knew his
Mm-mm,
growing up or
I
not,
don't
but
think so.
okay.
Oh, that just
But
kind of made me
yeah.
hot.
Yeah, they are a great family. The Wyatts are great family.
Yeah. I'm fairly certain I went to school with one of the Wyatts.
Yeah, but I'm 47, so and I think Tom's probably between you and me. So
I think you're exactly right. Yeah. No. Aiken is this, and I'm sure Texarkana is probably the same way. Sweet little town, some of the nicest people, beautiful. I think South Carolina is a gorgeous state,
yeah.
anyways. But yeah, I have such beautiful, fond memories of that little Aiken, South Carolina.
Yep. Yeah, no, Texarkana is the same way. It's a great, for some people, it's a great place to stay and continue traditions of, generations of raising families. I have a lot of fond memories from there. I think kind of for my interests and passions and where I wanted to go in life, it was going to be a hard time to do that in Texarkana.
Hmm.
And so we left, but it's still a fond spot in my heart.
So, did you go to high school in Texarkana, or okay?
I did all high school and then went to the University of Texas in Austin. Actually, a little detour. My first year in school, I went to a small school in Virginia and was asked to take my talents elsewhere after that first that first year. And so transferred back to the University of Texas in Austin amongst my people and finished out strong.
There you go.
So
There you go. What did you study?
I was communications major. It was
Okay.
called corporate communications. It was anything that did not require math. And if you could,
Preach,
yeah, I
honey.
think you and we got some communications background there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Radio and TV was something I considered.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And that communications department at UT is brilliant. It's amazing.
Yes, it was a great college experience too.
Um, I
My
have
parents are listening, so I don't know if we should talk about too much of those college
no,
experiences.
it's
So,
okay. Yeah, we won't. You were a perfect little angel. You went to class every day. You went to the library
tell you where
every
the
day.
library was. That's right.
I went to my first job, well, my first and really only job in Medford in TV. Mark McClune went to UT. Do you know Mark McClune? He's in sports now.
I don't know. That name kind of sounds familiar, but I don't know if
He has such
I
a
don't know.
TV name. And then Matt Spalding also went to University of
Also
Texas.
very, yeah, also a very familiar name to me.
This is like
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon happening right now, like this, like 6 degrees or seven, whatever, how many
The
of
world's
these.
that way though. Birds of a feather. You end up, you find your people. You do. So,
It's so true. It's so true. So, what did you want to do with this communications degree?
boy, that's a good question. I really did think for a while I wanted to go into broadcasting. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. But then as I got into college and, we kind of almost dive into some of the stuff with my family and vineyards and wine. Um, I got to, while I was in college, I began spending time out here in California and really the early inklings of an interest in wine and vineyards began to kind of percolate up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as I went through college, I didn't ultimately fall in love with the broadcast side of things. And so I finished with a degree in corporate communications, which was kind of a blend between the business school and the communication school. And knew at that point really that I wanted to pursue California and the wine industry. Didn't know at the time exactly what that even meant, but I knew that I loved this business enough that that's kind of what I was going to do. So I got the degree, but didn't really ever do much with what I studied.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
happens. Had your parents moved at that point?
No, we own property here.
Okay.
Really starting when I was in junior high, my parents bought some land in Sonoma County. My father was an orthodontist from Texarkana, Texas, and so he didn't retire from his practice until much after I was out of school. So they had land here; they would spend a lot of time here. I moved here after college, was living here, working for a different company before we started our own winery. And then I guess it was 2006 or seven. My parents retired and moved to California full time.
Nice. Dr. McWilliams, is that your dad?
That's my dad.
I have a very special place in my heart for all orthodontists because these were not these pretty when I
Yeah,
was
that's how I know. They straighten. My father, he has a really bad joke that as a former orthodontist, he has the straightest vineyard rows in Sonoma County.
he probably does because he's probably like
Really bad
OCD
joke.
about it. Yeah.
Oh
Um,
my eyes every time. say it.
So I guess then let's back up a little bit. Were your parents big into wine? They bought property out in Sonoma. So were they like fans of the wine world?
Yeah, it's a kind of it's just crazy how life works out. My mom, for the most part, was raised in Texarkana. She was born actually in Oakland, California.
Okay.
My granddad, her father, was a naval pilot. So the first up until maybe third or fourth grade of her life, she was on the West Coast. She was in California. They moved to Texarkana. It's a long story, doesn't matter. And she graduated from high school in Texarkana, went to college at the University of Texas. She was a French major and moved immediately after college to France,
Ah.
lived there for several years. One of her stops, one of the places that was really influential to her was in Lyon. So kind of right between Burgundy and the Rhone. And it really made a huge impression on my mom when she was young. Just food, wine, the beauty. I mean, from a small town in Texas, she had never experienced anything quite like that. And it really made an enormous impression upon her. She moves back to the US, meets my father. They get married, start having kids. Just it's difficult to go to France at that point with four kids. And so they kind of rediscovered California in the 80s, early 90s,
Nice.
and really started spending vacationing a lot there. Her brother, my uncle, around that time, coincidentally moved to California, got a job working in the wine industry, and kind of was this like nexus or brought us together
Mhm.
into wine country, into Sonoma County. And one thing leads to another. And my father and my uncle bought a piece of land in the early 90s with a very loose dream that one day they would both retire, one day it'd be paid for. It was large enough there could be multiple homes on it. And they would just kind of, that would be a family retirement compound for them. And that was honestly their original dream. It wasn't, I don't think, ever to get into the mess we're in now.
Oh, I love it. I love that. And how dare you? Long story. It doesn't matter. It all matters, Mark. It all
No, it
matters
does.
to me,
It's
especially.
Yeah, it's just it's amazing to me how kind of life works and the circuitous paths sometimes that you end up in places you never dreamed you'd be.
100%. And I love this. Your mom, lives there, lives in France for a while, and that's where I feel like in my head I'm like, oh, now it all makes sense. She
Mhm.
has this like love for it. Growing up, was there wine on the table with dinner like every night?
That's a complicated question because we grew up in the Baptist church, and so
Oh,
if
honey, I hear
if
you.
a few, if a few couples came over, there was no wine at the house. But if one couple came over, there might be a little wine on the table. So
Yes, we have funny stories in my family of visiting my grandma. It's Christmas Eve. We're being quite, cheerful. And the preacher comes over and it's like,
yep,
hide your margarita.
hide the eggnog.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my mother is an incredible cook, and I know everybody says that about their mom, but my mom truly is an amazing cook. And while there wasn't honestly probably a lot of wine at the table when
Hmm.
we were young, I do think when I look back that the smells in the kitchen, there was always something cooking, and I mean that. Like I would come home from school in the morning. There was just always something cooking in our house, and my mom was really good, and she cooked like at the time as a little kid, like weird French food, and she would always make us taste and try this stuff. And a lot of the stuff I didn't like at the time, but I can really like trace this core memory back to smells and tastes as a young kid. And I think I like pull from that a lot
Yeah.
now. I didn't realize the influence it was having on me at the time. So it wasn't so much the wine as it was just like crazy, what I would think of as exotic foods when you live in Texarkana and you're trying all this weird French stuff.
Yeah.
It had a huge impact on me. Opened my eyes, I think.
Absolutely. Your mom's Janice, right? Is it Janice?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my kind of woman. I think there's nothing more comforting than having something cooking in your kitchen.
It's just, yeah, the smells, sensory when you're in wine, it's just everything. And I think about that with wine. It's so much more about the aromas than it is really the flavor at the end of the day. And something in a home when there's something cooking, it just makes you feel like home.
I so agree. And I do think that the introduction to food and different foods and tasting different things, I think that's kind of a gateway to enjoying wine, right? Because it all goes together. I preach this all the time. It's not just about, this beverage that's in a bottle. There's so much that goes into it. There's so much that surrounds it. And that's what we have to focus on. It's not about like an alcoholic drink. It's just not.
No, It's like an extra set of salt and pepper. What wine can do to the meal, just the flavors that go both ways, that come out of the wine, that come out of the food, the way that a course can be changed when you like just a fantastic wine with a meal, or you got this wine and then you put a fantastic meal with it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a pretty magical drink.
I agree. I so agree with you. Obviously, this is why we're here. I love this dream though that your parents had of, having this like kind of retirement compound in California. You moved out there. You said after school, after you graduated?
Yeah, it's a funny story there. I remember vividly. It was Labor Day weekend of 2000. I graduated in August. I'd been out of school for 2 weeks when I moved to California. And my parents, they were a little frustrated because I didn't have a plan. And so the idea was, okay, move to California, work a harvest. And if you like it, great. Maybe you can make a career out of that. And if not, good luck. You're a college grad. You can figure it out. And I got a job. I was working for kind of the parent company was Kendall Jackson, but I was working for Hartford Court and La Crema, which are two of their like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay brands in the Russian River Valley. And here it is. It's Labor Day weekend. I've been out of college for 2 weeks, and I'm super bummed that I'm having to work on Labor Day weekend. I'm like, come on, man, it's Labor Day.
Right.
Unaware that grapes ripen in September, and like we're in a Chardonnay vineyard, and the fruit's about to ripen. And so here I am wearing white t-shirts, Wranglers, and Red Wing boots, walking through this vineyard, nibbling on Chardonnay with these winemakers who don't know me from Adam. I don't know who they are. I don't know why I'm working on a Monday on Labor Day. And I hear them talking about these flavors as they're eating these Chardonnay grapes. And it hits me like a ton of bricks. I mean, it's like one of the true epiphanies in my life. I'm like, we make wine out of this, and these are the flavors, and we pick them now, and this is going to turn into Chardonnay. And I mean, my mind was just kind of like, it was the coolest moment. And in that moment, that's crazy. It was Labor Day weekend of 2000. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I got to figure this out. Awesome.
Wow.
So
that is a ton of bricks.
Yeah, it was. I could take you to the vineyard today. I'll never forget that moment in my life. So
I love moments like that just, it kind of decides your path.
Yep, it was it. And, I didn't know anything. Wine to me was still, I was more in beer and bourbon at that point in my life, a new college grad, but it became fascinating to me. And I all of a sudden, these varieties and these wine regions, they started to make sense to me. And the alchemy of how you could take these grapes and go through this process, and over 9 months or 12 months or 24 months, this juice would turn into wine and these flavors. And it captivated me. And I guess now, whatever that is, 24, 25 years later, it's still as exciting to me, as fascinating, as curious as it was in 2000.
Well, right decision, right? I mean,
yeah,
you made the right decision.
Got very lucky.
I was interviewing a winemaker out in the Applegate Valley here in Southern Oregon, and he was teaching me he was tasting the grapes, and he said, bite the seed. And if it tastes like a grape nut, he's like, then we're close.
We're getting close. Yep.
Yeah. And it's like little tidbits of information like that have always stuck with me, because it's like, you only know that from experience, right?
Yeah.
And just his knowledge is incredible.
It is. It's fascinating. And so much of that, you can learn that in school, but you really that's anything in life, any profession though. Just at some point, it just takes years and years and years of repetition and listening to kind of, and just an awareness. You have to be passionate about whatever it is that you do. And I think if you are, you just never get tired of it. You begin to realize there's a lot that you don't know. You begin to be way more open to things that maybe when you were young and thought you had all the answers. The longer you do it, you begin to realize maybe there's not just one way to do things, or there's a few different ways to get to that same conclusion. And that becomes the journey, I think, is the maturation and the just kind of fleshing out. It's just experience and time.
Sure. Yeah. I interviewed Randy Ullum.
He was one of my first bosses. Yeah.
Oh, that's
absolutely
awesome.
That dude has a mustache, doesn't he?
I was going to say, who's the actor? I get total vibes from him. He was in Tombstone.
I know exactly who. Yes, exactly. He would be a great Western actor.
What is his name? It's like, it'll come to me, and I'm going to have to look it up because that's going to drive me crazy.
Randy is obviously an icon in our business, and just he was one of my very first bosses.
Yeah. He, obviously incredible guy. And, he was even saying at my age, I still have such huge passion for this industry. Mm-hmm. And it was just very touching to see, like, you could see it in his face when he talks about it.
Isn't that aren't you just you feel blessed when you find your passion, whatever it is, and you find people that get to pursue a passion. And it's such that old adage about you'll never work a day in your life. It's so hard. It's a grind. You got all this stuff to do, but when you're fortunate enough to find a passion and pursue it as a profession, it really is fun to watch people excel.
Oh, absolutely. So then explain the link to me with Arista, because I read that your parents actually founded this winery,
Hmm.
correct?
Correct.
So you're working at Kendall Jackson. How long were you there?
Was there for almost 3 years working for them.
Okay.
I started off in their what they call grower relations, and so that was kind of on the vineyard side of their operation,
Hmm.
and then was able to work my way into a cellar position. So just dragging hoses, shoveling tanks, entry level, kind of affectionately called a cellar rat.
Yep.
And that was my first kind of real day-to-day exposure to the winemaking process. And I think that's when I began to realize, so we had this vineyard as a family and it was great, but we at that point we were probably 10 years into that vineyard.
Wow.
And it was obvious that that vineyard was never going to be anything that would support multiple families. My parents were in a situation where in retirement, it would have been nice to have some supplemental income, but it wasn't going to be like mission critical to their life. But if you started talking about trying to make that vineyard a family business, it wouldn't work. And we weren't financially in a position to scale land to really get enough planted acres that could be a family business. And honestly, I wasn't a farmer. I mean, I enjoy the farming side, but even to this day, we would depend upon some really smart farmers that we work with to make some big decisions for us. So I wasn't a farmer. We could begin to wrap our mind around as a family, a business, a winery. It would be easier to buy a ton of grapes than it would be another acre of land. And we started looking at, okay, maybe we could make wine. I was working in a winery at that point. I was beginning to form some relationships in the Russian River Valley. We were growing Cabernet at the time in the Alexander Valley. That's where I was living on that property, but my day job was in the Russian River. And so it was kind of organically happening. I was beginning to make relationships. I was falling in love with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. My mother used to live in a place that was just south of Burgundy. She loved Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And we just kind of, as a family, as we begin to make that decision, even though we had a Cabernet vineyard, I think our love, and we were just being drawn to the Russian River Valley. And so that's in 2002. My parents launched Arista as a brand focused on Pinot Noir and then later Chardonnay in the Russian River Valley.
Nice. And they were sourcing fruit from other vineyards?
When we first started out, we were truly what the classic kind of garage virtual winery. We were custom crushing, making wine in a friend's winery. We didn't own a single berry that was Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, so we were buying all of our fruit. I kind of think about it like sleeping on your buddy's couch. We were a little bitty brand, didn't need a lot of space, just starting out. You got to figure it out. And so for a couple of years there, we slept on a buddy's couch. And then eventually the buddy said, "You got to get out of here, dude, do something on your own." And so we got an apartment, which was when we kind of rented our own facility. It was just us. We didn't build the place yet. And then just a few years ago, 2018, 2019 is when we actually built our own winery on this estate that I'm at today. So,
I'm sure that felt good.
dream come true.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm glad, I just kind of hope I'm not taking this in different directions here that you want to go or rein me in, but things happen for a reason. And when we first started this winery back in 2002, I was so much younger then. I wanted to build the winery immediately. And number one, we couldn't afford it. But number two, I'm so glad that we had to go through the process of 20 years.
Mm.
You just learn so much. And had we built a winery in 2002, being in the industry for 6 months, I just know that it would not be what we need today. You just trial and error and making some mistakes. We were fortunate enough to be able to make some mistakes and learn some things without it being too damaging to a brand. And so I love the fact that we were, 12, 14 years into our journey before we built the winery and had a lot of experience under our belt. So, but yeah, it was a dream to get to build our own winery to our own standards, the way we always wanted a winery to be.
I probably say this too much, but I definitely believe everything happens for a reason. I just do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I was in, again, news for a very long time and kind of retired from that industry to do the things that I really wanted to do. And I
Mhm.
always felt like I was too late. Like I was like, I should have done this
Yeah.
5 years ago. Like I would have been
Yep.
mid 30s and, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And my husband tells me all the time, he's like, no, you did this exactly when you were supposed to do it.
I don't disagree. It's just that I'm a firm believer in that. So
Hmm.
sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, that's part of the process too. It's just the patience that you learn.
Right.
But it happens for a reason, purpose.
Sam Elliott. That's who
There we
Randy
go.
Ullum.
That's Randy Ullum, the doppelganger for Randy, no
Yeah.
doubt about it.
I love that. And Arista. What is that?
Mhm.
What is the name? What does that signify?
Yeah, it's a Greek in origin. It means the best or the top, the highest. So it's where the root of Aristotle, aristocracy,
Oh,
aristocrat means the best. And so
nice.
what we're shooting for, what we hope to be.
Yeah. So mom and dad, are the founders of this winery. You take over when?
At the start of 2013.
Okay.
So I'm the oldest of four.
Right.
The next in the batting order is Ben. And so Ben kind of grew up in this business with me, 3 years behind me, but kind of working for our family, our parents. And at the end of the 2012 vintage, my father set us down and said, hey guys, I'm ready to kind of step away from just day to day of this. It's time to pass the baton if you guys are interested. My brother and I presumed that to mean that they were going to give the business to us. He had a different idea that we would buy the business from him. And so we kind of had to work through some fun family dynamics there, but we purchased the business in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And in the best possible way. My parents, they laid the foundation for this business. There's no way we could have done what we've done today without them.
Yeah.
But a lot of what my brother and I were really pushing hard to do really was the impetus to kind of have this family conversation about a generational change. We were still driving at that point. We wanted to build the winery. We were in growth mode. We wanted to go. And my dad, at the time was like, guys, it's just at this point in my life, I don't want to go into debt to do this. I don't have the energy to do this. You're young. Everything's in front of you. This is the time for us as a family to pass the baton. And we did. And boy, we could talk all day about that process. And I think, again, if I could do things differently, I probably wouldn't. But man, the approach that when my brother and I took over and some of the changes that we underwent as a brand, it was big, hard stuff. But 11 years later, I think we've come out okay. But
Yeah. Hey, it's hard working with family.
not me. I mean, it's hard to work with them. I
Right.
don't.
Of
I think they're
course.
lucky.
Of course. You are perfect, Mark McWilliams. No, I've interviewed family, wineries that are family owned and operated. And they
Mhm.
joke, they're like, we don't always agree, like hardly ever agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's family.
Right.
My brother and I, we get along great, but we have very different personalities, and I think that is part of I don't want to say success, but part of what works actually well for us is we're not the same person, and so we provide a lot of frustrating counterbalance to each other. I'm more of the idea, big picture, kind of forward thinking guy. And my brother's the super practical. Okay, great, big guy. How are we going to pay for that?
Hmm.
And I think that we kind of keep each other in check a little bit there.
I was just going to say that's a great balance.
Yeah, he reigns on a lot of my big ideas, but
Damn it,
but
Ben.
some of them might have put us in the ditch.
Damn it, Ben. I was looking on the website for Arista and there's a picture, it says our story and I think it says team. And you click on team, one of the pictures, and it's just like this huge family and a bunch of kids. And I love the idea that the team at Arista is a bunch of minors.
Yeah, we take advantage of the family labor laws,
Perfect.
in California. We don't have to pay them, and it's a family business. It goes back to anything. It could be
Yeah.
a shoemaker. It's a family operation, partially because we want to instill some work values in them, partially because we need the help, and partially because there's a tremendous amount of pride and joy in an agricultural job where it's a lot of hard work. And you get to teach kind of a next generation some of they're principles that are business principles, but the life principles. I kind of think about, man, the advantage that my friends who grew up in this industry. They grew up running around in vineyards. They grew up in cellars. They grew up with other families. Some of this stuff is just second nature to them, where for me, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
All of this at essentially an adult, I'm having to learn. So my wife and I, and my brother and his wife, really have tried to raise our kids in the vineyard, in the cellar, just, around this all, in the hopes that someone, maybe all of them, enjoy the business and want to keep it going.
And also, though, they're seeing firsthand what hard work looks like, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
agree.
Back in the early days when y'all were making wine, who was making the decisions in sort of the wine making? Like, was it a group effort, or did you have a team?
So it would have been, we had a consulting winemaker that worked with me, and it really, she and I would have kind of done the winemaking side of things.
Mm-hmm.
She was the real pro, the talent. Again, I didn't come from like an enology background, so I had some practical experience in the cellar. And anybody, like, cooking or anything, as long as everything's going well, anybody can do it. It's when something kind of goes awry that I knew that we needed to have a pro. So Leslie and I were doing kind of the winemaking. My father was, again, running the day-to-day operations. I think he didn't want to necessarily be involved in any daily decisions on the winemaking side of things. So he kind of like let Leslie and I handle that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that, I would say successfully for about 10 years before we took over in 2013. And that really necessitated some role changes, which is when we brought in a new winemaking team. I really began running the kind of the day-to-day operations. And I'd love to talk about that, because that was a huge moment in the kind of the history of our brand.
How so?
So when my brother and I took over, I told you that my parents really laid the foundation, but my father was an orthodontist. For a lot of it, he was kind of back and forth. And in the best possible way, those first 10 years or so of our brand, we didn't really ever say no to an idea. It was new and you were learning. And I told you, there's some mistakes that were made about just good things, but just you had to learn the hard way. At the end of the 2012, we were making wines in Oregon. We were working with the family in the Willamette Valley, making Pinot Noir we were trucking the grapes down from the Willamette Valley. And then we were making wine from all the way down in the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's an enormous distance there. And then a bunch of stops in between. We were making Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Zinfandel, Gewürztraminer, Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, Syrah, Cab Franc, just kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And so when my brother and I took over, we realized we needed to be, we weren't big, we weren't small, we weren't good, we weren't bad. We weren't really known for anything. We were a brand of making wine. And at some point, back to that kind of get off the couch, it was time to get serious about what were we going to be. And so my brother and I were really both equally committed that we needed to make Pinot Noir, Chardonnay from the Russian River Valley, get rid of everything else. I had to I needed focus. I needed some blinders. And so we hired, who is our winemaker today, but in 2013, a guy named Matt Courtney to be our winemaker. And he is the one who really brought this focus and a determination and an understanding of what it would take to be great. And a lot of that was saying no. Just because you love, Nebbiolo doesn't mean you got to make it. And I was like, well, let's make it. So we needed focus. We went from 15,000 cases of wine down to 5,000 cases of wine. We got out of everything that wasn't Pinot and Chard in the Russian River. We kind of rebranded the brand and set out to hopefully become, a benchmark producer for our generation. We had this generation of producers in front of us. We're surrounded by these, I'm looking out this window, the Williams Sellium estate. I'm looking at their vineyard right now. Rocchioli is to our north. Gary Farrell, Davis Bonham, David Ramey, Kistler, Dumont, Flowers, and we're surrounded by these iconic producers. And there's a bit of like responsibility we felt like if we're going to have an address on this road, West Side Road, there's a level of responsibility that a brand needs to have to bring your A game at this address. And we weren't doing it, to be honest. And we needed to bring in talent. We needed to reshuffle the deck. I knew that my role was, I was better at bringing together a team and really putting super talented people in place and let them do their job, get out of the way. And when we made that one decision, we're going to make Pinot and Chard from the Russian River and just say no to everything else. The next decisions became a little bit easier to make. And it was this kind of cascade of decisions and processes over, the last 10, 12 years.
Fantastic. And I think there's a lot to unpack there, right? Because you guys were you're finding your lane. I always say, like, get rid of the stuff that you're kind of good at and just really focus on the stuff that you're really, really good at. It also sounds like, in a way, you guys were finding your way home. Is that weird?
No, I mean, I think we were finding who we were,
right.
what we were. We were college years, experimenting, trying things out, figuring it out. We didn't know. We didn't come from 5 generations of winemaking. We didn't have a roadmap. We were kind of making it up as you go. But at some point, you have to, you got to commit. You got to be something. I'd read a book, write it back to Things Happen for a Reason. My wife will tell you, I read like one book a decade. I just don't, I listen, but I just don't read books. And I read a book called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And it really changed my life. And it was happening right at that moment. And what you said is kind of the premise of that book. Do one thing, but do it great. Mm-hmm. You don't try to do a bunch of stuff halfway good. Be great at one thing. Figure out what that is. Understand that's what you want to do, and then be really great at that. Excel at one thing. And that's kind of, okay, well, we don't have to make Gewürztraminer just because you had it once and thought it was good. Like, let somebody else do that. Make Pinot and Chard and drink somebody else's Gewürztraminer. Yeah. And that, as simple as that sounds, it changed our life and trajectory. And we apply that to everything. Less but better. Work with fewer growers, but work with the best growers. Work with less coopers, but work with the best coopers. Have fewer employees, but have the best employees. You can apply that to any aspect of your life. Sure. And it really is one of the guiding principles of our business.
Mm-hmm. I would tell my reporters all the time, what's your why today? Like, why are you doing the story today? Why do our viewers care why you're doing this? Like, you have to have your why every morning when you wake up.
Yep. We'll get into that later. I've got some, I know you're going to ask me some questions here in a little bit. I'm ready for them. And that's one of them. So,
well, tell me now, what's your why? What's your why, Mark McWilliams?
Well, I think my why kind of depends on kind of what the context is or what you're talking about. But I think you're going to, you're going to ask me at some point, my happy place. Do I get ahead of, do I talk about that?
That's my final 3. Those are my final 3.
All right. We're going to wait. So we'll circle back to that. I got a good answer.
Okay. Perfect. One of the questions I had for you, and I hate the word saturated, but you just mentioned, you guys, Arista's in this place where these fantastic wineries and winemakers live and work every single day. What are the challenges in sticking out?
Man, that's a great question, because there are some really great wines on this road that are made by some really great people. And so how you differentiate yourself is a challenge. I think for us, the way we look at that is, it is our unique set of vineyards that Williams-Sonoma doesn't exactly have that set. Rocchioli doesn't exactly have that same kind of set of vineyards. Whether it's this estate that we own or some of the families that we work with. I think too, you get into the weeds, but there's definitely process or protocol how we make our wines I think about it like cooking. You could give me and Emerald the same recipe, the same ingredients, and how he makes his dish and how I make my dish, they're going to come out very different. Why is that? eat his before you eat mine for sure. There's just something that kind of a unique set of people with a unique set of vineyards in a unique winery. It's going to manifest in a particular way. And I think there has to be authenticity behind whatever it is that you're doing, because at the artistic level, at the very creative level, kind of the world that we live in, people want. There's a lot of good wine out there. If you're just trying to win on good wine, that's a really, really hard game to play.
Yep.
People want the story. They want the whatever. It's a family or a corporation. They want that gets into the why. So and people want that. There's something magic about wine that is just so much more than grapes. There's the grower stories, the family stories, the staff stories that people draw to, and you can't fake that. Your story might suck, but at least be honest about it, right? Tell who you are. Don't People can sniff out the inauthentic super fast, and so back to find your why, be exactly who you are. You'll find your people. Don't go chasing what you think somebody's going to want. Just be who you are.
Yeah. My heart just exploded because I preach this every day. I have lots of winemaker friends, and I've done little tiny baby consulting for like the marketing side of things.
Yep.
And I always tell them my number one rule is, what is your story? What's your story? Who are you? And that's what your wine may be really, really good, but I'm going to go back because I love the story of the winemaker and that family-owned winery, and why you planted Nebbiolo, and why it's important for you that now you have this first vintage in the bottle because it was important to dad or grandma or whatever. Like, find your story. That's it. And that's what makes me as a consumer want to come back to a certain winery again and again and again.
I agree. I tell my staff that all the time. I mean, just like, yeah, would it be great if you were Michael Jordan and starting like that? But I think people, the normal consumers, there's this, you're selling this dream, this idea that they could see themselves doing this too. You're just another normal person that had a dream, and you're pursuing it with the bumps and the warts and the good and the bad and all this stuff. I think that's what people love. You don't have to be a celebrity or a superstar or have this crazy story. Those are helpful, but there's a lot of average stories around here that are really neat stories of, just different walks of life. And you find the stuff that you're drawn to when we're little. We make 6,000-7,000 cases of wine. It's not like you're going to find us in every grocery store in America. I don't have to worry about competing with Kendall Jackson. That's just not my world. I spend half of my day is spent sending my best customers next door. Like, you think these wines, you should check out those wines.
Which I also love. I love that. I love this teamwork and camaraderie that exists in the wine industry for the most part. And I just, again, that story, I love envisioning. I have this idea of little, baby Mark and baby Ben running around this vineyard, right, that parents bought a long time ago. And now look what it is, what it's become. I love that. I love the idea of that.
One of the things that I say often, I've said it before, I've said it again, so many of the things that we dreamed about doing when we first started, we've never done. But so much of what we have done, we never dreamed that we would do. Like, it's just crazy how kind of life does that to you. You don't know. You start off, you have all these hopes and dreams because you don't know, and then you start going for it, and a lot of that stuff never plays out. But you look back and you realize, look at all this stuff that we've done that we didn't even think about. We didn't know to dream about that stuff. And so I think, that idea of strong convictions loosely held is such a driving part of our life, that you have to have a plan and you're going for it. And this is what you're doing. But if you can't adjust, or you can't like just roll with it a little bit, I think you're going to miss a lot.
Man, that hit me like a truck. Yeah, that's good. That's really good stuff.
I think that's original thought too. I don't think I ever heard somebody say that. Ooh. I think that's an original idea.
Trademark.
I tend to give credit where credit is due. I think that's original.
Trademark it right here.
Sticking with it.
You heard it first on Hungry for More, the podcast.
There we go.
You sound like a foodie. Are you a foodie?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
You
you're in
kind
the
of have to
wine
be.
business. You're going to be around a lot of good food.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't consider myself like the world's greatest chef, but
Do you
I
cook?
know my way around a dinner plate.
I thought you were going to say kitchen. Do you cook?
I do, a little bit.
Mm.
I'm kind of maybe more of I'm a man with his grill. I'm good with the proteins and the meats and all that kind of stuff. But I think if I had a separate fantasy life, I would be a saucier. I
Ooh,
suck at making sauces, but I have such appreciation for um if I could have a superhero talent, it
yeah.
would be to be able to like instantly make any sauce in the world. I just think they make dishes.
They do. They absolutely do make dishes. And in my opinion, because I'm not a chef by any means, but I'm a pretty decent cook. I know my way in the
Yep.
kitchen. And sauces are the hardest for me.
I
They're the
know.
hardest.
I agree. They can be like profound or they can be so subtle and they set the dish off. I love that. If I could do anything, it'd be to make sauces.
We were at a wine dinner and like the main dish came out and it was this like a demi-glace, some sort of like reduction that
Hmm.
the chef said had been reducing for 48 hours.
It's
I,
amazing.
I'm like, I ain't got time for that, chef.
It's crazy. I know. But
48-hour reduction.
we're going to go down a tangent here. That's my favorite kind of like, um, and it applies to our winemaking. Maybe it's why I kind of gravitate towards it. But I love low and slow. I love the simmer. I love the reduction. I love a roux, something that takes
Yeah.
hours and hours to make. I think it's a personality type I have. I've got we'll get into some things. I know, again, you're going to ask me about some where I want to be, but there's something about the way I'm wired. It's counter. I'm the most impatient person in the world. I want things right now.
Yeah.
Yet I have this weird personality trait where I love low, slow endurance. I love endurance sports. I love uh, random fact about Mark. I love bonsai trees. And there's something about bonsai that like you have to think years in advance on
Yeah.
something and you just have to be patient with it. But there's so much gratification that comes from yeah, I don't know where that came from, but
No, I
I like
love
the
it.
low and the slow, the 48-hour reduction sauce.
Yeah.
There we go.
My husband's a little obsessed with bonsai trees.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to get him on. He and I can talk.
Yeah. Honey. Yeah, no, he loves that idea of taking something. Yes, same thing, low and slow, and being very meticulous. And
Hmm.
there's a reason for every little snip and cut on your tree to prune it. Yeah, all those things.
And you won't see the results sometimes for years, but
Exactly.
it's being able to visualize something
Yeah.
and wait for it that
Yeah.
I love that.
I love a good Sunday food project. Something that takes 6 hours that you can't really leave the house, right? Like you have to be right there with it the entire time. My stepdad taught me how to make Texas chili, which
Yeah.
PS does not have beans,
No
people.
beans under no circumstance.
Zero, no beans whatsoever. And it's like a good 3-4 hour project. But I love that idea of like putting football on and cracking open a beer and just cooking chili and just chilling
And
out.
it's community. It's people are coming and going. It's talking. Yeah, just in a world that is so fast now. I think that goes back to my thing too. There's something very sexy and nostalgic about patience and slow and anticipation. It's just we want it now. We're conditioned to Amazon Prime, and I don't know. We're wired to be social. We're wired to be process, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just slow down and smell the chili.
Smell the chili with no beans. And
That's right.
that's exactly why I wanted to do this podcast. In a world of TV news where we had to take an 8-minute interview and condense it down to a minute 15 story,
Yeah.
it never, I was good at it, but it never felt right to me. And I wanted to do a podcast where, first of all, I didn't edit it. It was
Yeah.
unedited. So everything was in for the most part. And then also,
Just in the first take.
and take two. Take two.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
but just this idea of slowing down and asking questions and letting you answer for 5 minutes and not taking any chunks out of that, right? Just
Yeah,
like
I love it.
letting it roll, letting it
Long
breathe.
format.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Letting it breathe.
Yep.
We are going to wrap up just a little bit because I want to get to the final three, my final three questions.
Got it.
But a couple more questions for you within this, world of wine that you're in, because I love this idea that I love wine country. I mean, I'm in Southern Oregon. We're in wine country, and
beautiful.
Yes. And I was going to say, anytime you're up here, we better go wine
I'll look
tasting.
you up. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
We better go do
I drive up almost every year. One of my best friends, they have a place in Eastern Oregon. We like to hunt. We do some elk hunting up there. And so, but we kind of come through clearly. And so I'll let you know the next time we're coming up.
Yeah. My husband, who's not a hunter, he's from Southern California, Huntington Beach. So, but he's not a hunter. But he's a fire.
You can hunt down a good fish taco.
Right. Yeah. Hell yeah. And a good margarita. But he works with, he's a fire captain. He's a firefighter. But he works with a lot of good old Oregon boys who they go to elk camp. They go over to elk camp and they go hunting and get bear and elk and whatever else. But yeah, I'm from a family of hunters, bird hunters and deer hunters. Yeah. South Carolina. It's just like you have to
come from some good bear hunting land.
I think you're born in some families in South Carolina. I think you're born camo, like you're just born in camo.
How it goes. Yeah.
With a shotgun. My husband bought me a Remington 870 years ago. And I told my papa when he was still alive, I was like, Papa, I have a Remington 870. And he goes, baby, that was my first gun. And I think he was prouder at that moment that I had a Remington 870 than anything else.
That's it. If you're duck hunting with a Remington 870 and you drop your paddle, you can just put that shotgun in and use it as a paddle. That's the most utilitarian shotgun you'll ever use in your life. I have got one. Everybody has one. I love it.
Everybody, yeah. Good hunting in Oregon for sure. In this wine industry, where do you see Arista in, let's say, 5 years?
Where do you see us in 5 years? So I feel like for Arista, there's these very pretty well-defined chapters of Arista. There was the first kind of 10 years of figuring ourselves out. And that was from 2002 until 2012. 2013 to honestly about right now is kind of this next chapter where we've been almost in startup mode again, 2.0 mode, where we were reinventing the brand, bringing in a new winemaking team, kind of changing the style of our wines. And so much of that has been telling the story and kind of where we see ourselves going. But you turn around and you realize now, man, we've been doing that for 11 or 12 years at this point. And we're very fortunate that we are established. We have a following. I think we've accomplished some things. And so I think kind of moving into this new chapter or phase of Arista where we're more settling in. We're a more mature brand at this point. I think I'm probably less interested in just keeping on growing and growing and growing and really settling in and just refining a process. I think we were really good at that process. You never rest. It's not about just kind of being content, but I think I'm probably less driven now by let's make another 1,000 cases or add 2 more vineyards. And I think it's more about really discovering as much as we possibly can about the families of vineyards that we work with. I think that's something that's cherished in the old world that isn't so much cherished in the new world. There's so much praise for a family that has farmed the same piece of land for 400 years in Burgundy, where here it seems like it's always about like, what's the next fermentation vessel, or what's the next clone of this, or it's always about like, what's the next thing that you're going to do. And maybe that's back to low and slow, old soul. I don't know, but I'm so happy with the families that we're working with, the team that we have. And I really think it's like, man, can we hammer this and just consistently do what we're doing now for the next chapter? I don't know if that's 5 more years or 10 more years, but that's kind of the phase I see us in now, is not so much growth, but like really being consistent now and hammering away at what we're doing.
Well, I applaud you for that. And that you reminded me of what I was going to either ask or just talk about, that there's this idea of so many hands, right? When you have a bottle of wine, I like to think about all the hands that were on the grapes, that were in the juice, that made this bottle happen. And here we have families that have been working for vineyards for decades. And then I know it's very true in the Willamette, very true in California. You have these families that have been working in these vineyards for years, and their kiddos are now doing it, going to school to learn enology and viticulture. And it's just, it gives me goosebumps, and I absolutely love it. And I'm with you. I did a series on harvest last year, and I wanted to focus more on the vineyard workers because they're doing all the work.
Our industry is built on their hard work, and they don't get the attention, the credit they deserve. It's why I love seeing stories done on them. Around the winery, we try to feature pictures of all of our guys and just their faces, so people kind of see who the real people are doing the work. We get a lot of the attention, but it's a lot of our winemaking team and our vineyard team that never gets seen or talked about, that really, they're the ones doing everything.
I love that. Well, I want to talk about them for sure. So I really love that. We are in the middle-ish of holidays. Are there any family traditions for the McWilliams?
Yeah. Thanksgiving for sure is a big one for us. We all tend to gather here. I have, like I said, family in South Carolina. I have a brother who lives in Germany, but is between DC and Germany. So Thanksgiving's big for us, kind of around my parents' table. Christmas for us has changed a little bit, just 4 siblings and kids and strewn about. So we kind of we go to the different in-laws or our house that we don't get to be big together at Christmas, but Thanksgiving is the one that my family's always kind of held on to. That's big, and I love it. Maybe it's always been like that. When I was a kid, when my grandparents were still around, it was always around them, and there would be 40 people, maybe even more than that, at a Thanksgiving lunch or dinner.
Yeah, and
so we've kind of carried that tradition on. And you live in wine country too. For people who might be listening who don't, there's a lot of beautiful places in the world, but I'm telling you, our wine country in late October, early November is about as gorgeous as it gets.
Yep.
And Thanksgiving is just at that perfect time as you're kind of coming out of harvest. You're coming out of the crazy season. The weather's changing. The leaves are changing. It's a natural time to pause and reflect and give thanks and just kind of reset. And for us, Thanksgiving really is a great family gathering.
Yeah. There's the road that leads to the road to get to my house. There's just vineyards on both sides. And right now they're yellow and red and purple and brown. It's just
wild.
It's just stunning.
I've never done the Northeast. I want to one day. And I know how beautiful that is, but man, the colors in the vineyard in late fall are pretty stunning.
Very, very stunning. All right, sir. Before we get to the final 3, can I just say how absolutely delightful you have been?
Well, thank you so much, Trish. I appreciate that. I'm sincerely honored to be on the show. You are a great host. It's clear that you're a pro at interviewing. You carry the conversation well. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I hope it's been interesting.
It's been fascinating. And you've given me so many good, takeaways that I'm going to share over the next few weeks. So
great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been so fun. Final 3. My absolute favorite, best advice you've ever been given.
Man, that's one that's hard because there's a lot of advice given, and in different contexts too. But so this isn't I'd say there's multiple, but one I honed in on is to focus on the process, not the outcome. Anything in life. It was so important when we brought in the new winemaking team. I was so focused at the time. I wanted to make these great wines, and because I wanted the accolades, I wanted the recognition, I wanted the scores, I wanted whatever that was. And that was young and naive. And it was somebody who had done this for a long time in this business and had a lot of success who told me, dude, just tap the brakes on that. Focus on the process. The results are going to take care of themselves. And it really changed the way I approached this business. And I actually found more joy in the minutia and the detail of, yeah, like how do you fall in love with every little step and get that right? And the measure twice, cut once idea. How do you obsess about that? And if you do that right, the results are going to take care of themselves. It really will become almost the byproduct of the challenge of getting the details, the process right. And that, I don't know, that was a changing point for me in the way I ran our business at that point. So that resonated with me.
That's amazing. And I think too, we've discussed several times in this interview, when you do focus on the process, everything else kind of just falls into place. It just kind of happens.
Falls in line.
Yeah.
Or you actually begin to care less about what that end result is, and you fall more in love with that process. And if you're focused on that end result, you're going to miss so much of the stuff that happens in the process. It really is kind of I think the learning stuff and the maturation stuff.
It's very zen, right? When you're just focused on what's in front of you and you're not thinking about tomorrow or next year. It's very, very zen in the moment.
Yes.
Really quickly, my husband gave me a iPod Touch years ago. You remember the iPod Touch?
Oh yeah, that was like first, yeah, Gen 1.
Super cool, yeah. On the back, he had it inscribed, "No stress in the moment."
Mm-hmm. So I have more, and I'm trying to hold my tongue, but there's like two more that
Tell me,
I wanted
please.
to say. So this is going to go to my next question that I think you're going to ask, but I'm a big trail runner. I know you can't see me. I don't look like I'm a pretty stocky dude, but I love ultra marathons. It's kind of my favorite thing to do. And so I'll answer that. What's my happy place? My happy place is being on a trail running. And you said it, it's the Zen, the meditative side of things. And so these two things, your first and second question, kind of come together for me. Trail running to me is this awesome thing where I can challenge myself physically, but I challenge myself mentally. Sometimes you go on these long runs and I don't want to think, and I can just not think. And that takes me to this other advice point, which is run the mile you're in. As a runner, that's a thing that's always said, run the mile you're in. If you're starting a marathon, you can't, if you think about mile 26 and mile 2, it's overwhelming. But if you just run 1 mile and then you run 1 more mile and you string them together, and it applies to so much in life. But getting out on a trail, other times I need to think. I have something big that I'm just dealing with, and I can just get out and I can just think, and I don't listen to anything. I don't have anything on me. I go. And it's a way that you don't pass some time. You can turn around, 2 hours have passed, and you're just kind of, it's just a great place for me to get away and either not think or really focus and think. So
amazing. I love that. That's very, very Zen-like. And so that's your happy place, is on a trail running.
On a trail in the woods by myself, hopefully not being chased by a bear. So
that's when I run on a trail. If I am being chased by a bear, that's where you'll find me running.
Time to go. It's definitely, my son is a trail runner too. And he actually encountered a bear recently on a night run. And I mean, you talking about worked up. He was absolutely jazzed.
Yeah.
He was scared to death.
I have a friend who lives on a ridiculous, like 100 acres or something. I think even more than that. And she's a runner, and she carries with her on. Yeah, she has to.
Yeah, trust me. It's you do some of these night runs. You're out there by yourself at night. It's a little spooky. I'm not gonna lie. Kind of heads on a swivel.
So I thought you were cuckoo for just being a trail runner, but you trail run at night.
Well, sometimes it depends on if it's a race or something. You're definitely going to be dark, by yourself.
Yeah, y'all crazy.
Yeah, sometimes we're not right. If you're running 50 miles, there's definitely some things that are wrong with you. So,
my grandma used to say, "That ain't right. That just ain't right."
Yeah, he needs prayer. That boy needs prayer.
Needs prayer, ain't right. Okay, sir. In all things, food and drink, what do you crave?
Yes. I'm going to set aside Pinot and Chard because that's what I make. I could do that all day long. I think for me, my desert island white is going to be Riesling. I love Riesling. I love German Riesling. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most versatile varieties on the planet. It can be sweet, it can be dry, and it can go with so many different things. Yeah. And it's just I love Riesling almost more than any other grape variety. And I mentioned Nebbiolo too.
Mm-hmm.
I love Barolo. But I think it's so funny that my two foods, I'm a sucker for like chicken or pheasant pot pie. I don't know why. It's comfort food. It's just, I
Yeah.
love, it's one of the things I do love to make from scratch. I love to hunt, so I can bring in different game, put it in there. But I just love the coziness of a pot pie
Yeah.
or elk. I'm an elk fan.
Elk is
So
delicious.
there's a million things I love to eat. But like for me, if I have to, pheasant pot pie
Yeah.
and a Riesling, and just I'm good.
Ooh. Sounds amazing. Yeah, I had an elk Wellington at a dinner once.
Ooh,
So like think
cool.
beef Wellington, but
Beef
elk.
Wellington, but yeah, with elk.
It was super good.
Yeah, elk is so delicious. It's one of the it's my choice meat for sure.
And
So
then went hunting several years ago with one of my dear friends, and it was like a reservation. So they had like quail and chucker and some
yeah,
pheasant, and they kind of hide them. And my friend
yeah.
has bird dogs, so we went hunting, and we brought home some chucker and I think quail. And he's an excellent cook, and we just had like risotto and quail cooked in this like clay French pot or something ridiculous. It was brilliant.
Give me like risotto, give me something mushrooms, and now I'm going down my Nebbiolo road. Give
Yeah,
me some Barolo with that, and this time of year too. I love the fall. This
me too.
isn't like when I thrive. Give me cozy comfort food. Give
Yeah.
me beautiful crisp days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we go mushroom hunting in the fall for chanterelles. So, because they are plentiful in Southern Oregon.
I think
So,
mushrooms might be one of my love languages. So
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Although I have friends I cook sometimes on my social media platforms, and they're like, "Will you please stop putting mushrooms? They're disgusting." And I'm like, "We can't be friends anymore. I'm
oh
sorry."
no, sorry. And yeah, you guys do in Oregon. You do your mushrooms well
We're
up there.
very
There's no doubt
we're
about it.
very
Yeah,
serious about mushrooms in
delish,
Oregon.
delish mushrooms. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Once again, Mark McWilliams, from Arista Winery, thank you so much for your time. We chatted for a very long time, which makes me so incredibly happy. But I just love your energy. I love how so down to earth you are. You remind me. I mean, we're probably cousins, like somewhere way
Maybe
back,
so.
probably.
Yeah, could be.
No, I'm excited. I'm gonna come visit. I want to come visit.
Please do. Trish, you are welcome anytime. We're here. Would love to host you at some point if you're ever kind of coming through Sonoma County. It'd be a treat to get to share my family's property with you. And thank you too. Thank you for having me on. I hope that this has been interesting to the folks listening. And if anybody ever wants to come visit us, come see us in Healdsburg.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They should. And same goes for you. If you're, traveling through Southern Oregon, you find yourself needing a break, you let me know. We'll go wine tasting. So Mark,
Maybe have some mushrooms.
Thank you so, so much. Again, it was an absolute pleasure on my end to chat with you.
Thank you, Trish.
You've been listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma with me, Trish Close. You can watch this podcast and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Just search Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma. You can also listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.